So in the previous video, we talked about arrays, and we now know what arrays are and how to create arrays in Swift. We also know that arrays have index, so everything is ordered, has a certain order, and each index points to an item or a value. In this video, we are going to proceed and talk about dictionary. So in this case, our dictionary has the same kind of idea of a real-world dictionary, where you have a word and then you have the meaning of the word. A dictionary in Swift stores associations between keys of the same type and values of also of the same type as well. So all of this will happen in a collection with no defined ordering. Okay, so as you can see here, this example has a column of keys. We have YYZ. You see this YYZ here points to Toronto Pearson, okay, as its value. And then we have DUB, which points to Dublin Airport. We have the LHR, which is London, okay? So that's the key concept here about dictionaries. So just think of a key value pair association, which will allow us to store data. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look on how to actually use dictionaries. I went ahead and created a new project. By now, you should have all the knowledge to go ahead and create your own project, playground project that is. So go ahead and do that. Name this project my dictionary because we are going to be talking about dictionaries. All right, so as usual, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this string here. Okay, so dictionaries, let's say here. Dictionaries. All right, how do we create a dictionary? Well, you may have guessed by now. So we start by saying var. I'm going to call this my dictionary. We will start with the implicit way of creating a dictionary. So we're going to go ahead and say my dictionary is equal to, we will put here our square brackets just like we did with arrays. Now that we have our square bracket, we said that we need to have a key value association, which means, let me put here, so it has to be key, and then this key will be pointing to a value, right? So what we need to do here, first thing we do, we have to have a key. So a key, in this case, we're going to have a string. We're going to go ahead and say bank as the key. And then notice what we're going to do. We're going to put a colon here. So think of this colon as saying, okay, this bank is the key for the value we're going to put here. So we can say money. Okay, so now we have this key pair of value here because we have the key bank and the value we want to associate to bank is money, right? So let's go ahead and print this out here. So print and say my dictionary, and fair enough, we're going to have bank money. Now, the whole idea of having key value pair association here is so that we are able not only to create a more advanced data structure or ways of holding data in our programs, but also to be able to quickly access the value, right? That's why we have a key. The reason why in the real world you have a key is to open something and access something, right? So that's what we can do here. So the next thing we can do here, as you can see, if we just print my dictionary, it will just show the entire association, bank and money, right? What we can do if we want to just get the money, so through our key, we can say square brackets, and we say bank, and it says here optional money. Now, this optional money here, obviously we didn't write any optional, so we have no idea where this comes from. We'll talk more about it later, okay? I don't want to complicate things, but to actually get this to work, we will need to put an exclamation mark after our last closing square bracket here. So that way we actually get money, which is the value to this key here. So now we're accessing our value through our key, all right? Now, we can obviously put as many key value as needed. So the way we do that, we just put comma and we'll put another key. We can go ahead and say restaurant as the key, and the value we can say food. If we want to access food, obviously we can go ahead here and say restaurant, and guess what? We're gonna see food. As we've been learning so far, we notice there's always two or more ways of doing the same thing. Now, if we want to explicitly say what type of values we're going to put in our dictionary, right? So we can go ahead and say my string dictionary, comma, square brackets, and inside we're going to say string, colon, string. I'm going to have a space here. And then once we have that, that's when we go ahead and actually create the associations we want. In this case, we can go ahead and say home. I guess home we can associate with happiness. All right, and go ahead and say work. If you love your work, you will associate it with fun. All right. You may not have the same sentiment, but I hope you do. So here we go. Again, this is the same. The bottom one here on line 8 is the same as what we have on line 7. It's just that we are deliberately telling the system and ourselves that, okay, this dictionary we are going to create is going to hold strings, which is exactly what's happening here. Now, if we wanted, obviously, you've guessed now, if you want to create a myInt dictionary, we could have done the same thing, except, yes, you guessed it, we can go ahead and just say, for instance, 156 like that. The second one, you can say 2 is 123, 3 is pairing with 78, as you can see here. So if we want to go ahead and print out the int, we can say print my int dictionary, and what we do, again, square brackets, and let's say if we want to know what's the value of the key 2, we actually get the value here by putting this optional here, which is just a exclamation mark here. All right, so there we go, 123, and it's indeed here 2 points to 123. The other way to think about this, if it's a little bit confusing now, if you look at bank, let's go back to our first example. If we look at bank here, the way you want to read this is bank points to money, which means if I want to access money, I go to bank. All right. Restaurant points to food. If I want to get food, I go to a restaurant. That kind of helps understand what this dictionary's key value, what they do. Okay, so nothing really complicated here. It's just the idea of understanding that this is all what's happening here. So you are creating values, key value pair associations. You're associating bank with money. So if I want to get money, I find bank and then I get money. Okay, so that's the way I try to remember these concepts here, and really helps. The same things we were able to do with arrays, like accessing and modifying arrays, we are also able to do when it comes to dictionaries. So to find count, essentially to find the length or the size of my dictionary, it's very simple. What do? We just go ahead and say my dictionary dot count. And indeed, you will see here it says 2. Why is it 2? Because if you look here, we have bank, money, and then comma, and then restaurant. So each one of these counts as 1. So everything is kind of delimited by a comma. So bank, money is 1. Restaurant, food is 2. All right, so we can go ahead and find a count also of our myString here. Dictionary, so myString dictionary dot count, and you will see here it says also 2. Why? Because we have home, happiness as one entity, and then we have work, fun as another one. Great. The other thing we can do here is we can go ahead and add something to our dictionary. All right, so what we can do to add, simply we can go ahead, let's say using our example here in my dictionary, say let's go ahead and say my dictionary again and open our square brackets, and then we put the key we want to add. In this case we can say MT, and we can go ahead and say equals to Montana. So Montana is one of the states in the United States. We were saying here now we are adding to my dictionary, which is this dictionary here, right? MT key, and we're associating this MT key with Montana. Now let's see if this is true. Let's go ahead and print my dictionary here and see what's going to happen. MT, Montana, then we go forward, bank, money, restaurant, food. Very nice. And so you can do the same with our myInt dictionary here. Now, a little challenge for you. go ahead and add key 5, a value of 128. So what we would do is we would say, in this case, my int, and then we would go ahead and open our square brackets, and then we'll put 5 as the key, finish that, and then we would say equals 456. So 5 the key, and the value is 456, which is indeed what we wanted. Perfect. Good, good, good. So in the next video, we'll continue talking about dictionaries. All right, I'll see you in a bit.